It's only a couple of days into 2026, but the Bruins are setting themselves up for a huge portal season in the next couple weeks.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever it's your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. What we're talking about today, the UCLA women at the end. We're going to talk about their win over Penn State on New Year's Eve and set the stage for their crosstown showdown against London Jones and USC. Second segment, we'll dive into UCLA's first Big Ten matchup in 2026, a stout Iowa defense. We'll talk about that in segment number 2. But to lead things off, let's talk about the UCLA returning players who have announced. You've got UCLA setting up a couple of visits with some key players in the portal and announcing 10 new assistant coaches for Bob Chesney's staff. We'll talk about the continuity and how all those players factor into one another. 2 key visits coming up in the next weekend or so, announced by one, Dorian Thomas, brought out by Matt Zenitz of CBS Sports. Who is Dorian Thomas? Well, this is a guy who plays tight end. UCLA faced him from New Mexico. Initially started his career at Arizona. Didn't really get off his footing there. Had a redshirt season early. Was going to maybe leave after Jedd Fisch went to Washington. But Dorian Thomas is a guy the Bruins must get. Between Cal, Florida, Wisconsin, and UCLA, those are the early destinations for Dorian Thomas to transfer to because he's announced those visits there. So this is what he has. One of the top 2 tight ends in the portal. So the Bruins are swinging big early. That's a good sign at a position of need. Third among tight ends in receiving this season, 56 catches, and was first team all-conference in the Mountain West, all right? And I know the Bruins have to certainly build around the big man up front if they want to protect Nico, they want to get a run game going, but why not have a solid receiving tight end? For Dorian Thomas this year, in that game against UCLA, had a couple of catches, 41 yards. The week prior, or a couple of weeks prior against Michigan, had 2 touchdown receptions against the Wolverines in week 1. And while Michigan was not necessarily championship good, to still do that against Big Ten competition, he proves he's Power 4 worthy, and the Bruins must go after him in terms of, hey, we have a hole in our roster, let's go fill it. This is what makes Dorian Thomas so elite. A guy who might even look at Washington at some point this year. He is among the tight ends that had 47 targets this year, was one of a few who did not drop a single pass. He had, a 74.2 receiving grade from Pro Football Focus in 2025, and after playing for Jason X squad, was solid. One of 3 tight ends this year, 47 targets, not a single dropped pass. That's a guy you want as a sure-handed target for Nico to potentially run up the seam in Dean Kennedy's offense. And if the Bruins are truly putting towards the resources and recruiting with the new staff they're bringing in, with Bob Chesney's efforts to get West Coast guys, West Coast kids, talented players, this is an absolute must-get for Dorian Thomas. Now, the other big name UCLA is going after, a true number 1 receiver in Nico Brown. I talked in the other podcast on New Year's Day about how Quasi leaving is kind of sad, but Quasi does not have the skill of a Nico Brown, at least not at the collegiate level. The Huntington Beach native, looking for a 1-year stopgap in his graduate year, is coming over potentially from Yale, all right? So for Nico Brown, a former Ivy Leaguer, is somebody the Bruins must watch out for because, according to On3 and Greg Biggins, the Bruins are looking at him. He is going to check in at UCLA for his first visit of the transfer portal season. And who is Nico Brown? Some of you might know the name, some of you might not. Nico Brown is a guy that in 10 games this year had 1,000 yards in 10 games, 71 receptions, and 11 touchdowns. All numbers that led the Yale Bulldogs. This was the first season that the Ivy League could play in the playoff, that their conference allowed their champions or teams to make the FCS playoffs, and they did. You might remember, you're looking at the first round of the FCS playoffs, you're like, oh, I might have seen Yale have a crazy comeback. Did Nico Brown put up a lot of yards in that high-scoring game? No. He was sick, he was injured, so he didn't inflate his stats against a team in the playoff that had a big high-scoring first-round game. He did it consistently. in 10 games, so he did miss a couple of the 11 games that he could have played. They played, what, to 12? He played in 10 of them. 7 games, had over 100 receiving yards. In every single game, had a reception of nearly 25 yards, at least one for his long reception, all right? Most of the games, receptions of over 30, 40, 45 yards, and in each of Brown's last 4 games of his games played, had receiving yards of 103 yards, 102 yards, 189 yards in the rivalry bout against Harvard, and then against Montana State, who are playing in the championship game of the FCS, 107 yards, 1 touchdown, and 11 receptions. So against the best competition at that level, against some of the best teams, he was not held down. Against Lehigh, who was a top-ranked team this year, 2 touchdowns, 85 yards. Against Stonehill, 6 receptions, 83 yards. You're like, isn't Stonehill bad? Yeah, they beat him by 40, the Yale Bulldogs did, and he still put up numbers. So throughout the year, the consistency was there. It wasn't like he had a 200-yard game with 3 touchdowns that inflated the stats. Nico Brown has the ability, the West Coast ties, and the Bruins are in need of a solid receiver that can connect with Nico down the field, and this is the guy to go after. Already setting up a visit, according to Greg Biggins of On3 and the Rivals Network there. So the Bruins have 2 key visits of guys who could, at skill positions, lead to more weapons down the field for Nico. Key guys to have announced they're staying. You have Eugene Brooks on the O-line. And for UCLA, key on the defense is that you got Roderick Pleasant returning. A Big Ten honorable mention in his last year. Would have been one of 4 UCLA defensive players to start all 12 games if he wasn't hurt and missed the last 2 games. So alongside Cole Martin and Roderick Pleasant, you've got a UCLA secondary that had a mass exodus. Remember, Cole Martin at one time was thought to have entered his name or prepared to enter his name in the portal, especially with his dad going to a new staff. Cole Martin decides to stay. You bring in Roderick Pleasant, an all Big Ten honorable mention, who with 8 pass breakups, 41 tackles, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, block kick in his few years of college football going from Oregon to UCLA. Elite speed, maybe that can be tapped into a little bit more in the return game in 2026. The Bruins have some continuity with some key guys they're swinging big for in the portal. And the Bruins are backing up what they've been touting all offseason, that they're ready to make the big moves to be competitive in the Big Ten and set Bob Chesney up for success that they really didn't do with Deshaun Foster, although it didn't seem like he would have been successful. But when you don't have the field ready, your practice field ready to start the season, it really showcases what you're lacking. Chip Kelly, well, the Bruins could have got rid of him when he had all the money in the world to go get the food, do whatever he wanted, and he didn't recruit. The Bruins have been slowly going backwards. This year, they're looking to go straight up in 2026. Also, some big news. The Bruins have announced 10 new assistants. Now, there are more staff members. There are more guys who will be a part of the staff, but these are the ones officially announced on January 2nd of 2026. So here are the new additions for UCLA, some of which we've already discussed, some of which are newer names. Dean Kennedy, Colin Hitchler, guys who have already been announced, offensive, defensive coordinators, following the likes of Bob Chesney from JMU. Already shared my opinions, but those are the big names to overhaul the offense and defense. You have Drew Kanan, who is a special teams coordinator, and the tight ends. Colin Lockett from New Mexico, wide receivers coach. Same coach on the same staff that Dorian Thomas just is coming from, potentially. So maybe that connection there will lead UCLA to have an inside edge for a top tight end. Chris Smith, offensive line, run game coordinator, another JMU guy. AJ Stewart, Gabe Lynn, 2 returning coaches from last year's staff, the only 2 on the coaching staff that have been retained by Bob Chesney. Sam Daniels, Anthony DiMichele, Eddie Whitley Jr., Vic Suoto, and Lingi Suaunoa round out the staff who have been announced for the UCLA official coaching staff. Maybe there'll be a couple more guys in varying roles, recruiting staff, but these are the on-the-field coaches that are going to look to make this team a lot different. A lot of this has a lot of continuity from James Madison, right? You have 6 to 7 coaches coming over from JMU. You bring in a couple of guys with West Coast ties, like Suawi Noah, who did just come from Michigan State as a defensive line coach, but has some years at Oregon State. Vic Suoto, who has years at USC, at Cal, to bring that connection. And Bob Chesney's goal is clear. The guys who we think can play and have the connection to come to California, he brought them to UCLA. Every other position, he's either filling a need with guys who have coached NFL guys, have West Coast connections, or can target the right recruiting options up and down the coast to the Pacific Northwest down to Los Angeles. So that's what UCLA is building as we open the portal. It's official. Thousands upon thousands of names are in the portal, record-breaking numbers. And the Bruins retaining some key talent at key positions. While I know we're glad to see a lot of these players go, some of which staying, good news. Swinging for the fences at some key positions, great. And the guys coming over, looks like they're all solid hires. We just got to see the Bruins go absolutely sign some guys. They got to go make some signees. Until then, we'll have more on UCLA football in future episodes. Next, we need a big swing by the Bruins on the basketball court. The men take on top 25 Iowa, an 11-2 Hawkeye team that has not lost this year. Is this where the Bruins shine, or just like last year, take a dump on a post-New Year's Day game in the Big Ten? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from the work, the money, life, it just doesn't switch off at night. And when it shows up the worst possible time, Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugiet Ready is next generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugiet Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients and 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. And that's why there's over 150,000 men who've already made the switch. So if you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to Rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 50% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. Feel present, feel confident, and feel ready. Cruising on here with Locked On UCLA, we're talking men's basketball. The Bruins have somewhat of a prove-it game. Iowa doesn't exactly speak the volumes like a win over Michigan State. Michigan would on the road, like beating Purdue at home would be on January 20th. But Iowa is kind of that similar both the Bruins have a year ago. Last year, there's a lot more hype for UCLA heading into the new season, into the new calendar year, where they went to a closer Midwest foe, a scrappy Nebraska team, and the Bruins fell a little bit flat. This time, they're an underdog on the road at a ranked Iowa team who is unbeaten at home, and in their couple of losses, impressed, including a very close loss at Iowa. All right, Iowa State, excuse me, their bitter rival, where they lost 66-62. So this is an Iowa team that in the starting lineup isn't oversized, isn't going to overwhelm UCLA with a bunch of 7-foot guys. So this is a good matchup for Cronin to see what can Xavier Booker give them. He has been slowly dwindling those minutes for Booker, who did have a sprained ankle, Cronin said, around the end of the calendar year. There's been a lot of recovery time. The Bruins have had some cupcakes, but for the first time all season, the Bruins can get a big-time road win and get put back onto the map as a team that can make some noise in the tournament. They'll have to stack those wins together, but to prove they can do it, this is a chance. So Booker, against a lineup, a projected Iowa starting 5 lineup, you have Bennett Sturtz, one of the top transfers in the country when Iowa brought in their new coach. You have Cale Combs, who was another transfer, Drake and Wyoming transfer. Think about all these Iowa guys who came over from Drake. You have a guy that's more assist heavy than he is scoring. You have Cam Manayamu, 6'9", Tavion Banks, 6'7", and Cooper Koch, who is 6'8". So between all those guys, tall in the backcourt. So I wonder what Donovan Dent's going to do against a bigger guard, very tall at the point guard, shooting guard spots, but their front court is not something that's going to overwhelm UCLA in terms of just sheer size. This isn't Arizona. It shouldn't be like Gonzaga, but even though you had their big men like a Braden Huff and a Graham Ike, one of which was a little undersized, they dominated the Bruins. UCLA, if Booker's not going, I'm expecting Cronin to go small, because this isn't like a couple of Big Ten teams that can go overwhelm you with size and 7+ feet, long wingspans. Let's see what Booker can do. If Booker can go out there, give you 12, give you 4 to 5 rebounds and a couple of blocks, that will be immense, because Iowa is the best team in the Big Ten in scoring defense, allowing about 60 points per game. What Mick Cronin would dream of with this team is what Iowa's good at. Average over 80 points per game and keep your team close to 60. And when they actually played somebody good, Iowa State, they kept them in the mid-60s. When they went to Michigan State, even though they lost by 21, they kept them in the low 70s. So against top-tier competition, Iowa has yet to get a big win, but they have beaten Xavier. They beat Ole Miss on a neutral floor. So they're still looking for that big quality win. This is one of those that can swing the standings either way. And remember, UCLA is 2-0 in Big Ten play. So a win here puts the Bruins undefeated at Big Ten play. Wisconsin just around the corner on the other side of the weekend as the Bruins build and build for a top 4 spot in the Big Ten tournament. And if UCLA thrives in Big Ten play, the non-conference, especially being in a big-time Power 5, gets washed away, and UCLA could secure a top 5 seed in a regional bracket. If not, then UCLA is going to have to live with a 10 seed or 11 seed. But a game in which Iowa is dominant scoring defense, coming off a game where they had about 19 steals. You got to lock down Bennett Sturts, and this is a game where Bilodeau can thrive. We need Eric Daly Jr. to come alive, and I think we might see a quiet game from Donovan Dent. The sheer size and athleticism, it's a good battle between Bennett Sturts and Dent in that backcourt, but it's going to be the guys up front who do a lot of the work. EDJ has to play. He has to make something happen. Otherwise, UCLA might be in for a long one against the Hawkeyes who, in Iowa City, they don't like to lose. They do not lose. This is one of those games where right now Iowa sits top 25, but throughout Big Ten play, they could be top 10. Iowa, they have UCLA at home, they go to Minnesota, and they host Illinois. So that's a schedule where if they win those 3, the Hawkeyes could easily be top 15 over the next couple weeks as the AP poll gets updated more and more. It hasn't been updated in a week. Meanwhile, if UCLA beats them, Iowa probably will take a loss at Purdue, maybe another one, but they're going to win a bunch of games. They got Rutgers, USC, Oregon, Washington on the road, Northwestern. So by the time February comes back, Iowa could be a ranked win and would definitely represent a quad 1 opportunity for UCLA, one that the Bruins have been starved so far in their resume. They haven't proven they can get one in a true road game. This is that opportunity to do so. They had neutral site opportunities against Arizona. You had one against Gonzaga and a Seattle opportunity. Now against Iowa, a game where UCLA has to come through. A game where I think they might go small, but the more Booker provides, the more UCLA is likely to win. And just like he did against Arizona, Booker can give all those minutes early, and then you lean on Jamerson late. But if Booker isn't giving it to you, I don't think you can play Jamerson. You have to let the smalls go big or go home. You got to live with Bilodeau at the 5 if Booker doesn't give you a lot, because Jamerson isn't going to bring it offensively for you like Booker can. And Booker just has to do his early season averages, a 10 to 12 point night, hit a 3. Hopefully they sag off him a little bit because he hasn't been taking them lately with the teams guarding him close at the 3-point line. He knocks down 2. He gets a couple of easy buckets down low and gets a block or 2. We'll live with that production, and UCLA will probably have an early 5 to 7 point lead. And then you can run with Jamerson and use all of his 5 personal fouls up and hope your team defends and rebounds enough to beat an Iowa team that is going to be revved up at home for the new year to take down UCLA. All these Big Ten teams that did not play the Bruins at home last year, they're going to be just as excited to play UCLA now. And Iowa has a chance to be like, all right, let's land a knockout blow on a nationally televised, quote-unquote, app game. I don't really know what Peacock represents, but somewhat prime time in the Midwest and the East Coast. I think UCLA might struggle quite a bit, but they need to score. As much as Cronin wants defense, UCLA has to go out there and score some buckets. I don't know if they can win a low-scoring game. This is not a game or a team that can go win it in the 50s or 60s like last year's team is. They're going to have to grind their way to 70 points and play a little bit of defense to win this game. This isn't like the previous Mick Cronin teams, but if they can win this, I think some minds will start to shift. It's not Michigan or Michigan State or Purdue, but this team is quite as good. Next, you got UCLA women. They have beaten Penn State New Year's Eve, and they got USC coming up. We'll talk about that next on Locked on UCLA. Fridays already feel a little different during the basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better every Friday night before the games tip off. FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app right before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. It's easy to check weekly specials before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. UCLA at Iowa, college basketball. The spread on FanDuel currently is Iowa minus 5.5. I say UCLA plus 5.5. Take it. Go for it. I don't exactly trust the Bruins to go on the money line here, but plus 5.5, I say go for it. And hey, you might be thanking me later. Meanwhile, with FanDuel, tip off, check it out before, check the FanDuel app, see what's dropping your NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's for NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Cruising on here on Locked On UCLA, we're talking UCLA women's basketball. The Bruins, who beat Penn State on New Year's Eve, so we're playing a little catch-up. Yes, it was the holiday season, it was my sister's birthday, so here we go. Let's talk about their win before we prep the UCLA showdown, the rematch, if you will, of last year's three battles and the reunion with London Jones. UCLA against Penn State. Here is what the numbers told the story. A game where I was wondering how Lauren Betts would do against a Gracie Merkel, how they would do against some of the better shooters and scorers in the Big Ten. Well, the Bruins promptly answered that with a 36-point beatdown. And yes, while they were even in points in the fourth quarter, UCLA was already laughing up big by the time they got to that point. Unless these two teams' game earlier in 2025, where it was displaced due to the wildfires in the greater Los Angeles area and they played at the Walter Pyramid, it was not close. UCLA was up 17 early, up by 20 plus at the break, and ended this game in the third quarter with a knockout blow before the last 10 minutes were even worth contending. Penn State did not lead a single chance. There was not a lead change. The game was tied once, but UCLA led for 39 and a half minutes. So that means, one, Lauren Betts dominated. I was wondering what she would do against a big post player. 25 points, 7 boards, and didn't exactly have a block shot, but was solid, plus 21 in her 24 plus minutes, all right? Wasn't overly used, but was putting up big numbers. Then you look up and down the board, you got Kiki Rice. Hit a three, was very efficient, got to line, had about 16 points, 6 assists on 1 turnover, all right? Huge for Kiki Rice in this game, plus 27, generally a leader for UCLA in that category and doing so yet again. Charlize Ledger-Walker, not one of her best scoring nights. No back-to-back games for Ledger-Walker where those scoring numbers, those shooting numbers were down during this Big Ten restart. But UCLA's 3-0 start has been helped because Ledger-Walker takes that pressure off of Kiki's shoulders. 8 assists, 0 turnovers. The Bruins don't need a scorer from Ledger-Walker. They need her to just manage the offense. And she can still, on a given night, go get 15 to 20. That's how good this UCLA team is. They could take someone's star, have her play a role, which he willingly accepts, and knew coming to UCLA, had a year off, came back to the Bruins, recovering from injury, and we're seeing Kiki Rice go off because of it. And if Rice has to take a game down, then you see Ledger-Walker. She can go out and hit the 3-ball, hit the mid-range, get to the cup, but right now is facilitating the offense beautifully. Gianna Kneepkens, a game where we got to see her 3-point stroke flying. 5 of 7 from 3, 17 points, 3 assists, 3 steals, seeing her versatility on display. She can play some defense, represents a much bigger guard than the former UCLA Bruin London Jones, and currently a lot more consistent from downtown. All right. Now, Gabriela Jaquez was getting a lot of the early love because she was hitting a lot of her threes, but Kneepkens is that next player who came in the portal to make this team the next level. Ledger-Walker was hopefully going to do that in a season prior, but the injury process and the recovery took too long. But you pair her with Kneepkens, this team is just going to go to a next level. Hopefully when they play somebody elite, that won't come for a very long time. Keep going down the line. You've got Angela Dugalic. Quiet night, but she's already produced quite a bit, especially against some of the team's best. And you got to see a lot of minutes from the bench outside of Dugalic, right? Sienna Betts got a double-figure night from her. Had 4 personal fouls in about 16 minutes, but nice to see her get some work. Gabriela Jaquez, a rare 0 for 2 night from her for 3. but in 22 minutes, works hard, gets fouls drawn, scores, assists, steals, does about everything, even though she had less than 10 points. And the matchup I wanted to see, what did it go like with Merkel? Well, in her 26 minutes off the bench, 6 of 6, 15 points, but only 4 rebounds. And she was a -7 on the floor. They different lineup. So Penn State, they had Mariah Murray, the 3-point shooter, who went 3 of 9 from 3, 9 points, 4 turnovers. So they forced her to turn over the basketball, and then a total of 18 forced turnovers. A game where UCLA had 8 turnovers. Last year, in games like this, sometimes the Bruins were sloppy and had more than 10 to 15 turnovers, sometimes close to 20 turnovers for a team that was supposed to be number 1 in the country. No. This time, the Bruins put up a near century in points. In this game, in addition, had 24 points off turnovers, plus 20 points in the paint, and got out and ran just a little bit and had more points off the bench. This is a game where Penn State's bench scoring was namely their starting big in Gracie Merkel, and she came off the bench in this game. So overall, UCLA had better bench production, dominated the paint against one of the better centers in the Big Ten. Definitely not in Lauren Betts' category, but a good, solid matchup that Betts has dominated the first time, and Merkel did better the second time a year later, but not as well as Lauren Betts. And overall, UCLA is taking care of the basketball. The crisp efficiency in offense is refreshing, absolutely refreshing, and the Bruins did that to the tune of an absolute beatdown. Now you get to take on a USC team who's been playing a lot better since their beatdown at home to UConn. Crushed Cal Poly, UCLA did the same, beat Cal in a close game at the Chase Center, and took down a solid Nebraska team right around the end of the 2025 calendar year, has had an extended break, and now goes to Poly Pavilion. A game that should be packed out, but after seeing USC in person, when they played UConn, seeing UConn's next level, and as much as this is a rivalry game, there's going to be a lot of emotions with London Jones on the other sideline. Jazzy Davidson is not Juju Watkins. As much as she is a star recruit, one of the better players, and they've got Kendi Smith, London Jones could all of a sudden go red hot. I just don't believe USC has the firepower to beat UCLA in this game. Not in LA, not without Juju, not without Kiki Iriafen. They don't have the power down low, and they definitely don't have the firepower from a 3-point shooting standpoint, barring an absurd shooting day from London Jones to beat UCLA. It would be downright shocking for USC to beat UCLA on the road in this game. It would be. I would be frustrated if UCLA wins this game at home by less than 15 to 20 points. Now, UCLA did struggle on the road at Ohio State, came back, responded with the dominant win against Penn State. With all the emotions tied into this one, as the Bruins are the clearly better team in this game, playing at home, they should treat it as such and put this on display. Because the committee is going to look at this game saying, this is what UConn did, this is what UCLA did. UConn's destroying everybody and will most likely finish the year unbeaten. UCLA, in a Big Ten that's seen quite a few upsets. You had Michigan going to double overtime and then losing to Washington on the road. You had other crazy upsets around the top 5, top 10 in the country on New Year's Day. UCLA, with a dominant win over USC, can look like one of those consistent top 4 teams. The Bruins coast through this Big Ten season, they will be a top 4 team. They will be in 1 seed. The problem is because of their loss to Texas right before Thanksgiving, that means UCLA, if you're going down the line in the tournament, would have to face off against UConn in a Final Four rematch, which you'd rather have in the national championship game, but if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. USC is not the best, so the Bruins should handle USC. And I mean, they should beat them by 15 to 20, and a really great team would beat this USC team at home by 25. The Bruins are better at every spot, more power down low, more scoring in the perimeter, better point guard play, and if the Bruins are sloppy, then we should be really disappointed in this team. Really disappointed. Now, they've had a little week of travel, and I wonder what that's going to play into effect. Even though they're still on the winter break, the Bruins should not come out flat. They should be energized, and there should be a fun, lively crowd. I'm not sure how we're going to respond to London Jones. I really don't. When You see some former players go to former teams. You might hear the Boo Birds. Jones was a great Bruin, but she's not wearing a UCLA uniform, and she's wearing those USC letters and colors on the other side. So we'll see how the Bruin fans respond. I say UCLA should win this by 15. Would be great to win this by 20 to 25 to equal what UConn did. And I would love to see everybody go off. This seems like a game where Gabriela Jaquez gets 20 or more points. We'll see if she gets back in the score sheet in dominant fashion. But until then, we'll talk UCLA recap. We'll talk new players coming in the portal, visits, women's basketball as well. Everything here on this Locked On UCLA podcast. So hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.